Today's episode is brought to you by Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. How are you going? How's things? How have you been? We don't expect much of a response when we ask these rhetorical questions, but are you okay? Well, that's something we hope the recipient would want to pause and consider. And it's a question we're all encouraged to ask our friends, family and colleagues, not just today because it's Are You OK Day, but every so often, because you just don't know whether everything is really fine or if someone really is struggling. Fleur Heazlewood is a wellbeing leadership expert and managing director of the Blueberry Institute. And she says it's incumbent on all of us, not just professionals, to understand and do what we can for those suffering. After all, as Fleur explains to Chris Ashmore, the increasing incidence of mental health in our society is alarming.
Mental health has always been something that we've considered as an individual's problem, and because we don't tend to see it, we've got this out of sight, out of mind type of mentality. But the reality is that 1 in 5 people, or 20% of us at any one time right now, actually has a diagnosable mental illness. And then when we look around the world, we can see that we're seeing increasing levels of chronic stress. We're also seeing numbers in the reaches of 60 and 70% in terms of people reporting that they're experiencing burnout. And to the point where the World Health Organization has actually now classified burnout as an official syndrome. That was 2019. So while mental health issues aren't necessarily easy to see, they're actually more common and more prevalent than we would expect. And so definitely something that we need to get better and more proficient at managing.
Those numbers are quite high, aren't they? And it's not so obvious if people in the office do suffer from mental health issues. How does anyone know if someone is suffering?
So how we can tell the difference between, I guess, the everyday stressors that people might be experiencing versus a potential mental health issue is in 3 areas. One of the things that we know is when we're experiencing stress, we'll have a peak and we'll usually find that maybe someone's behaviour or emotions change in the lead up to a high pressure event. And then we'll notice or we'll see that sort of like they'll go back to the way that they would usually show up or present once the stressor's finished. How we can tell whether someone might be developing a mental health problem is when we notice that those behaviours and emotions of either elevation or withdrawal are holding for a period of time. So we're looking at some duration for this, to the point where what we're seeing as a change in someone's behaviour or emotions might be showing up as their new normal or the way that they now present themselves. So we're looking for a pattern of change over time, but also where we start to notice that their ability to function or perform is starting to deteriorate. And so what that looks like in terms of participating in everyday life, it might be someone who would usually enjoy playing sport on the weekends, stops turning up to games and maybe by the end of the season has dropped out of the team. Someone who might enjoy socialising at a monthly or weekly book club, stops turning up to book club and stops reading the books. What it might look like in terms of functioning at work is it takes us longer to get the things done that we would usually do, or we make mistakes, or we forget things, or the quality of our work suffers on things that we would usually expect that person to know how to do reasonably well. So it's a toughie because there's no one size fits all to prescribing or diagnosing someone who has a mental health issue. But what we're looking for are changes in a person's behaviour and emotions over a period of time that is starting to affect their ability to participate and function.
What can a business owner do then if they know that one of their staff members has a mental health issue or feeling depressed or whatever? Is there something they can do about it?
Absolutely. I guess one of the great things about educating yourself in looking for the signs early is that the sooner we have a conversation with someone and connect them to appropriate helps and resources, generally the shorter their healing journey will be and the quicker, I guess, the road to recovery and full participation will be. So we don't actually need to be mental health experts to have a conversation that can help someone to transform their relationship with what's going on for them at the moment. And so simply asking someone, I've noticed that things aren't like your usual self at the moment. I'm concerned about you. How can we help you? Can actually make a really, really big difference. And a lot of business owners, I guess, don't go there because we worry. We're going, okay, well, what if someone comes back to us and says, actually, I'm not okay? Or what if they do share what's going on? I'm not an expert. I don't know what to do with this. Or I'm already busy. I've got enough on my plate. I don't actually have the time to sort of like fix or solve for someone's mental health issues as well. But the reality is we actually don't need to go down those rabbit holes. Asking someone how they are, seeing if they've got available supports, and then helping them to connect to those appropriate professional supports is something that every single one of us as business owners can do. So we don't need to take on or solve for what's going on for a person. We do not need to be a medical health expert to be able to say, thank you so much for sharing with me what's going on for you. I can see that this is a really tough time. How can we help you?
There's always a next step for your business. There's always help at every stage. As you grow your business, we're here to support you every step of the way. Move forward with Mazars. Visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.
So how do you actually have that conversation with the staff member who is struggling? Is this where your 5-step framework comes in?
The 5-step mental health mastery framework is designed for regular business owners and leaders and people managers just like you and I. And the first step is preparation. So what are the things that you've noticed about someone and, how might you approach them in a safe and private place at work? The second step is around how do we ask the question, particularly something that might be perceived as a little bit personal in a professional setting. So I'll give some scripts and some structures around that. The third one is around listening. And so what we're talking about here is listening to understand, not listening to solve or to take over. The fourth one is around empowering. How do we support the person to take steps that are going to help them in their healing journey in a way that doesn't mean that we are taking over or taking on their burden, but where they feel supported and helped to move forward. And then the fifth part is around performance, because of course we're all in business here. And many of us struggle with, well, how do I have a caring conversation but also address the performance issues?
And so how do you do that?
There's a couple of things. The first thing is that we don't pretend that there aren't performance issues when there are. And one of the things I recommend to everyone is we separate the care conversation from the performance conversation. So often we'll come in with this to-do list that says, okay, I've got to check in, I've got to make sure that they're okay, I've got to address some supports, and by the way, performance isn't working. And so we feel a bit icky and we don't do it well. So sometimes we need to sort of like put performance on hold for a little while to make sure that we've got the appropriate supports, or our staff member has got the appropriate supports first. Then the performance conversation is around, where do you feel comfortable in your role? Where are you struggling? And then how can we work together to fill those gaps? And so what we're looking at is a positive performance conversation in that we're tackling the issues head on, but we're putting in place the supports and the expectations around what we need during that period of time and what that looks like and who else can help.
Are some people reluctant to talk about it? It's good that they do, of course. How can a boss approach the subject and make the staff member feel at ease?
One of the things that's important to understand is we don't always know what people's history is or what kind of good, bad, poor, positive experiences they've had in the past. So there might be a whole bunch of reasons as to why someone might not feel comfortable or safe enough speaking. And if someone comes back to us and says, hey, I'm fine, nothing to see here, and we know that they are actually not tracking so well, one of the things that we can say is, hey, we have noticed that there are some changes. We are concerned about you. If you don't feel comfortable talking to us about this at work, I really encourage you to speak to somebody that you do feel comfortable with. So we don't necessarily need to keep pushing them in terms of solving for things. I mean, they have agency and autonomy, but we can still make suggestions and show that we are concerned and care and that we are here to support them if they do want to talk at any time.
There's a lot on the plate of a business owner. Anyway, running the business, How important is it to bring other leadership members involved with talking to staff about mental health issues?
One of the best ways that we can normalise mental health at work and, I guess, support each other and to share some of the care and the concern is by educating and having these conversations together and developing a language together and actually talking about how will we support people who are not okay and what does it look like, as well as how will we support other people. So I'm a really big believer in that if we look at mental health or mental health issues as something that gets shipped off to HR or, the HR consultant to deal with, things are only going to get worse rather than better. So having these conversations together as managers and leaders and responsible people across a business means that there's actually more people on the team to share in the support to recognise what's going on and actually to help people restabilise sooner rather than letting it spread into some kind of mental health crisis or performance crisis.
That was Fleur Heazlewood, Managing Director of the Blueberry Institute. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow at BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Mazars. To find out more, visit mazars.com.au. That's mazars.com.au.